You can check out our source materials and reference photos for each episode on our website, theeerietouch.com. You can listen to this podcast on Spotify, Apple, Google, and our YouTube channel. Be sure to follow us on Facebook for new leads and updates. And we would really appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star review on whatever platform you listen to your podcast on. It could really help us out. Hey y'all, I'm your host Gabrielle.
And I'm Kayla.
Welcome to the Eerie Touch, where we dive into all things murder, mystery, and paranormal every week. This week's episode is a very special episode. This week, we're asking for your help in the disappearance of 2 Pike County, Kentucky women.
2 beautiful and young single mothers who seem to have left without a trace, disappearing from their homes with no footprints left behind. Leads that have run cold, creating theories and even causing psychics to jump in as an effort to help authorities.
This is the disappearance of Gayle Branham and Nancy Ann Lockard. I'm going to start off with Crystal's story. I got the chance to speak with Crystal's Aunt Myrtle, who, even after all of these years, still remains headstrong in the attempt to find answers for her missing niece. Now, Crystal's mama was also named Myrtle, so I'm going to be referring to them as Mama Myrtle and Aunt Myrtle. Crystal's biological mother was Aunt Myrtle's older sister, Karen. Aunt Myrtle received guardianship of Crystal when she was 8 years old. Crystal lived in Ohio with her aunt, 2 cousins, which were Myrtle's children, and the father of those 2 children. When she was 17 years old, she moved to Kentucky, where she ultimately resided. In my conversation with Aunt Myrtle, I asked for her to describe who Crystal was, who she really was. The Crystal who you won't find on those missing flyers. And she told me that Crystal had a huge heart and would give the shirt off her back to help anyone in need. She was a woman who knew no stranger with a contagious smile. And she had gorgeous flaming locks of red hair that hit right at her shoulders and deep, rich chocolate eyes. Aunt Myrtle reminisced to me about how Crystal had this very distinctive laugh, almost like a silly little giggle that she could still remember hearing.
You know, I feel like this is really important. It is so vital for people to relate or connect with victims because, in a sense, you are giving them a voice that people can associate with and remember in this case. Crystal is more than just a missing flyer. Think of her as your sister, your best friend, your cousin, your mother. She's someone that all of us are close to.
So many people need to know that the things you read about or watch run across your news channel aren't just stories. These are things that could happen to any of us. It could be you sitting in Aunt Myrtle's shoes longing for closure. And if you walked in those very shoes, you would be wanting others to stand up and fight for justice with you.
And that's absolutely right.
Well, moving forward, Crystal was also a mother to 3 boys, 2 of which her Mama Myrtle has custody of, and 1 who lives with his father. In an interview with the News Express, Mama Myrtle spoke of Crystal giving her custody of the boys because she was struggling with an addiction. And though she had given her custody, she still obviously had visitation rights. She had done a year in jail before her disappearance and told her mama that she never wanted to go back. She wanted to clean up, not just for herself, but for her boys. Aunt Myrtle told me that if the boys weren't with Crystal, she made 100% sure to call them every night to tell them that she loved them. And even through her struggles, her boys were the main focus in her life.
Honestly, that speaks volumes about her character to me. She knew that she had issues, but she still loved and cared for her boys enough to make sure that she was still a part of their life. And they were well taken care of.
It really does. So, it was strange to the family when a night went by and there was no call made. In 2009, Crystal was living on Kentucky Avenue, which runs up the hill towards the backside of Pikeville College. It's there that she was sharing an apartment with her older sister, Natasha. And life was promising for Crystal. She was fighting her demons and seemingly winning, one step at a time. The future was bright until it got dark. March 3rd of 2009 started out as any other morning for Crystal. She woke up, started her day, and ended up calling one of her friends that evening to chit-chat, like we all do.
Yeah. I don't think there's a day that goes by that me and you don't speak to each other in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah. And we've done that for far too many years to count. But it's this phone call that holds the key to Pandora's box. Her friend told authorities and family that the conversation was just like any other phone call that they had made to each other. Until all of a sudden, Crystal tells her friend that there was someone at the back door, and as soon as those words left her mouth, the call disconnects.
Okay. It's weird that it disconnected randomly like that, but it could have just been her sister at the door, right?
No. I'm not sure exactly where Natasha was that night. I should have asked Aunt Myrtle, but she did tell me that Natasha didn't get home until the next day. So I'm assuming wherever she had left to that morning was going to be an overnight stay.
Okay.
Her friend tries calling her back, but just thought maybe she had got busy or something and didn't think too much into it. It's not until Natasha gets home that next morning and discovers Crystal's purse and coat draped over the couch, but doesn't find Crystal anywhere in the apartment that they start to actually think too much into it. But even then, the worst hadn't crossed their minds at this point. Thinking maybe that she had someone come pick her up or she had went to a friend's house, Natasha begins to call family and friends in an effort to figure out where she's at, though no one seems to have heard from or seen Crystal since the day before. Now, our Aunt Myrtle told me it wasn't until a few days later they reported her missing.
Okay. I could see not calling it in for like maybe a day, but why did they wait so long before reporting her missing?
You know, Crystal was battling her demons, not to mention she was an adult who could leave whenever she wanted. I mean, no one really thinks that their loved one would be a victim in foul play, and from the lack of the apartment looking as if there was a struggle, why would you think something bad had happened?
Well, that's true. If you were at my house and then you were gone, I would just assume that you had left. I probably wouldn't think too much into it either. So, did Crystal have a car, and if she did, where was it?
No. It's important to note that she did not have a car at the time. She usually got around by walking or hitching rides with her friends and family. Now, after a couple of days go by with no word from Crystal, the family's worst fear starts to come to light. Aunt Myrtle said that Crystal called someone in the family at least once a week to talk. So when a week goes by and no one hears a word from her, the dread is now pouring in. Authorities, along with the family, are beginning to realize that they very well may have a case on their hands.
So, what did the police think had happened? Did they think foul play was involved?
Given the circumstances of everything that's been played out right now, you have the disconnected and worrisome phone call, her purse that's been left behind, the fact that she left without her coat in frigid temperatures, and not to mention it's been days now with no sign of Crystal, so it's a safe bet that the police didn't take too long to recognize that foul play was suspected.
You said this was in March, so I'm assuming that it was pretty cold. If she did leave on her own free will, you would think she would at least take her coat with her.
Yeah. On that night, I think the warmest it got was like 35 degrees.
Oh, wow. Yeah, you would definitely put a coat on. 35 degrees is almost freezing, literally. Do we know what she was wearing at the time she disappeared?
Crystal was possibly wearing a red long-sleeved hooded shirt, dark blue jeans, and leather slip-on shoes with hoop earrings, and she also had a navel piercing. I don't know if they mean like a hoodie or if they mean just like a hooded tee. Like what comes to mind for me is whenever I was in high school, I had this red long-sleeve hooded t-shirt that had my school's mascot on it. And it was kind of like a thin like t-shirt material. So that's what I think of. But either way, 35 degrees is a little too cold to be running around without a coat on. At least you would think, right?
In my opinion, yes. If she did leave on her own free will, she couldn't have thought she was going to be gone very long because of how cold it was. You could also say the same about her leaving her purse, but I mean, there wasn't a sign of a struggle, right?
Yes. Police did have a look at the apartment and noted that, in fact, there wasn't any signs of a struggle.
Which tells me me. Either she knew who was at the door, or that she had at least let someone in her house. So, did she have a boyfriend or anything like that at the time?
Well, that, and you would assume that if there was any loud noises or screaming from a struggle, that neighbors would have heard something. See, in case you're not familiar with Kentucky Avenue, the majority of properties over there are like these conjoined townhouses. And when I was in college, I actually had some friends who stayed in some of those townhouses while they studied at Pikeville College. Usually, like when the college ran out of dorms for their students, they would like place them in surrounding houses or apartments. At least they did back then. But anyway, so I can remember staying the night with one of those friends, and I could hear the TV all night long from the conjoined townhouse next to me. So I know firsthand that the walls are thin over there. Anyway, so she did have an ex-husband who was abusive. His name was Rory, but he was in jail at the time. She did have a boyfriend though, and he was separated from his wife at the time of their relationship. Now, I didn't find a name in any articles, and Aunt Myrtle didn't tell a name, therefore I just didn't ask. But from what I've been told, he wasn't really that good of a guy, if you get my drift. I'm not sure if he was looked into or how far into he was looked at, if he was. Aunt Myrtle did tell me, though, that she did get to talk to him about the last time that he had saw Crystal, but he was a little rude and unhelpful, really.
Well, that right there is suspicious. But had he gotten back together with his wife? I mean, how many times do you hear about husbands separating from their wives and then getting back together? Or how many times do you hear of an estranged husband that says he's separated, but in reality, he's not? But maybe he was rude because he was trying to move on and, work on his relationship with his wife without any of the consequences that he would have had for being with Crystal.
Honestly, I don't really care if he was trying to move on. Like, this is
go.
freaking important. Like, a woman is missing. A woman who you had a relationship with. And I think it's pretty crappy that you don't care enough, because that's what I've taken from that.
Okay, let's calm it down. I'm with you 100%, okay? I'm just saying that he possibly could have just been having sex with Crystal. You know how men tend to be, especially when they're so-called separated.
I know, but you have to agree with me on that one. This isn't just some woman that you can't get away from. This is a woman who is missing, who's possibly a victim of foul play, and whose family is aching for her. It's not hard to be nice people, and it shouldn't be that hard to care.
You're right. It's not, and it should not be that hard.
Okay, I'm chill now. It's okay.
Okay. So, where do we go from here in the story?
We really don't have anywhere else to go. As time passed on, there weren't really any leads, and the ones that may have looked hot turned cold just as quick. But this didn't deter the family from staying on top of their priorities. They placed missing flyers of Crystal all over surrounding areas. In southeastern Kentucky, parts of Ohio, Virginia, and West Virginia. Aunt Myrtle went so far as to go to the Lexington Police Department because Crystal had been arrested with a man a few years earlier, but that man was in jail at the time of her disappearance. She contacted everyone that she knew that had some type of tie to Crystal. Now, most were more than willing to help, but nothing ever came of anything. There was also a ton of alleged sightings of Crystal. The police even gained 2 videos supposedly depicting Crystal somewhere in West Virginia, but when they were shown to her mama, she immediately knew upon watching them that they were not her grandbaby.
Well, I think that people who call in tips like that, they're truly just trying to help, and they may have really thought that it was Crystal, I would rather be safe than sorry.
Oh yeah, me too.
So, what about the evidence? They never found anything to help lead us to Crystal or a story of her disappearance?
Sorta, kinda not. If they do have anything in particular, they've not came out to the public with it. According to Aunt Myrtle, a few weeks after Crystal's disappearance, there was a woman who came forward who claimed she had saw blood on the side of Zebulon Highway. Authorities searched that area and came up with a shoe, earring, t-shirt, and pants.
Oh, wow. So, was it Crystal's?
Well, they swabbed the blood, collected everything, and sent it off for testing. When the results came back, they were positive for something. Animal blood.
It was found on the side of the road, and how many times have you driven down the highway and came across some sort of dead animal?
A lot.
Okay. But just hear me out here. Animals don't wear clothes or jewelry. So what about the clothes and the jewelry that was found?
At first glance, you would suppose that they were hers. Though Aunt Myrtle disclaimed that the shoe and earring were like something Crystal would have worn, but the pants and shirt were too big to have belonged to her.
And that's it. That's all. That's so frustrating. But anyway, did they test the clothes for DNA? What happens if her predator had made her change to throw off authorities, or maybe she had stayed all night at a friend's and borrowed clothes of theirs?
We think just alike sometimes. That thought crossed my mind too, but I don't have an answer to that question. Given the conversation that I had with Aunt Myrtle a month ago from us talking, the police finally came and took a DNA sample from Crystal's biological mom, Karen.
Are you serious? After all this time? Yep. They are just now taking DNA from the mom.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's so ridiculous. Why in the world wouldn't they have done this years ago when she first went missing?
Another question that I don't have the answer to. I don't know what is happening behind closed doors with authorities. I know that since her case first opened, there has been detectives leave and new ones that have taken over. I'm sure that they're trying to help, and I'm sure that they want to close the case, but I hate to even say it, but after talking to Crystal's family, some of the ones who were put on Crystal's case just haven't been that helpful for them. For example, you can find Crystal on NamUs, but that isn't because the detective or detectives had her placed in there. Aunt Myrtle herself had Crystal's case put on NamUs because the authorities hadn't.
Okay, first off, it is really disappointing that Crystal's Aunt Myrtle had to put her on NamUs and that the detectives on the case didn't even take initiative to do so. Second of all, I hate to say this, but how many times have we seen cold cases fall through the cracks after a while? When a trail runs nowhere, where else is there to go?
Well, Aunt Myrtle and Mama Myrtle failed to receive any follow-ups nowadays. The both of them find themselves making call after call to the detective that's on the case now until he finally calls them back. I just think it's so important, not just in this situation, but overall, for all of us to remain compassionate towards one another. For the families of victims, especially in cold cases, that's all they're really asking for. Compassion. To feel that empathy and want to help them recover their loved ones and find answers so they can find peace. As always, though, when answers don't come to authorities, you can always find those who want to lend a helping hand. In August of 2014, tarologist Empathy performed a tarot card reading of Crystal. Now, of course, when dealing with such things, you're going to come across skeptics. You're going to come across readings that have no structure, but sometimes they really do lead to answers.
Oh, yes, they do. In fact, the CIA maintains a repository of information about the use of paranormal resources for crime investigations.
That's right, they do. So in this tarot reading, Empathy is going over each card she's pulled. She explains that she feels that Crystal is connected to a school in some type of way.
Well, she did live right behind Pikeville College.
In one of her cards, she sees winter. Visions of leaves that have already fallen. Empathy feels like she's getting tugged towards August of 2008. Like there's a connection from something or someone in that time that has resulted in Crystal's disappearance. A dark-haired figure portrays themselves in her second card, and she immediately realizes that whoever this person is, they are not nice. They're giving off like evil energy for sure. This person is demanding of Crystal. Another card that she pulls is the King of Swords reversed. It's this pick that's telling Empathy there was evidence somewhere that could have helped find Crystal, but it's been cleaned up already. This dark-haired person, she says, could be male or female, but is showing themselves as predominantly female. And this female is untrustworthy and has bad intentions. Her final card ends up revealing that the way ahead is blocked, like that's what she's seeing, as if Crystal is at a brick wall, or she's hit a brick wall, or maybe she's under it. She thinks maybe Crystal is under concrete somewhere, or under a building. She's somewhere without easy access. But Empathy also sees two people here. Perhaps both are missing, she says. Maybe both are victims of foul play and have found the same fate. And it's this that's going to lead us into another case that has deceit written all over it. Just 3 months after the disappearance of Crystal, only 20 miles away. It's June of 2009, and in Nose Bend Fork of Turkey Creek in Pike County, Kentucky, the trees are full. The grass is lush, the creeks run with kids splashing through them, and the mountains that surround the area sit just as beautiful and rich as Mother Nature intended. The scenery around here is captivating and can lift anyone's spirits as you come through those mountains. But for one mother, the beautiful scenery that she calls home isn't enough to lift her spirits. 33-year-old Nancy Ann Lockard had just lost her father the previous year, and his death hit her pretty hard.
I could imagine. See, for me, I've lost numerous parent figures in my life, including my parent. So losing a parent is always hard, and it's a heaviness that I wouldn't wish on no one. So I could imagine what she was going through at the time.
Yeah. Nancy was trying to cope with the heaviness that lied on her heart, but one thing is for sure. Her 2 young sons could always make her feel light again. Nancy was a single mom to 2 boys who were her world. She couldn't imagine life without them, and even on the darkest of days, they brought out the sun for Nancy. We have pictures up of Nancy on our website, but to give you a feel of what she looked like, she was this tall, beautiful woman with a sweet smile. She had brown hair that almost had like a reddish tint to it, and it hit like right below her shoulders. She had these beautiful green eyes, and I'll tell you who she kind of reminds me of.
Who's that?
If her hair was just like a little bit longer, she almost reminds me of the Celtic woman.
Oh yeah, I could totally see that.
Right? Anyways, as beautiful as she was, it seems that she may have met an ugly fate. On June 24th of 2009, Nancy and her boyfriend Chris Chenard were staying at her late father's house up Turkey Creek. They had started their morning, as most of us around here in the summer do, getting up, eating breakfast, or making coffee before heading out to do some front porch sitting, as we call it.
Oh yeah, and that makes for the perfect start to a good day.
Definitely. But for Nancy and her family, it would make for a bad day getting worse. Chris and Nancy had ended up getting into an argument that morning, and allegedly at 11 a.m. he goes back inside the house, leaving Nancy on the porch. We're unsure of just how long he stayed inside the house, but he claims when he returned back out on the porch after some time, Nancy was gone.
What do you mean she was gone? Like, had she just left to cool off, or what?
According to Chris, that's what he originally thought, but after some time passes without Nancy returning, he starts to worry and phones family and friends. After no one can account for where she is, Nancy is reported missing at 1:30 p.m. that day. To make the situation stranger, exactly 8 minutes after she is reported missing, Nancy's mother, Carol Hensley, receives a voicemail from Nancy telling her to tell the boys that Mommy loves them.
Okay, that's really weird. So, they report her missing, and then 8 minutes after she's reported missing, she calls to tell her boys that she loves them. Like, do we know who called to report her missing?
Not really. I mean, I found some articles that said that Chris was the one who reported her missing, but I also found some other articles that said that her mom reported her missing. So, wishy-washy, I'm not for sure.
Okay. Well, anyway, that is really strange, 8 minutes after you're reported missing. But anyway, back to the story here. She had just gotten into an argument with Chris, and how many times have we felt down and just called each other to talk to our loved ones, And what would make a mother feel better than, hearing the voice of their sons? So maybe she was just taking some time to herself or reflecting on the situation.
Normally, I would say the same thing, but unfortunately, it's that voicemail that marks the last time anyone will ever hear from Nancy again. A search party gathers, including Belfry, Big Creek, and Upper Pond Creek volunteer fire departments, the Pike County Emergency Services, Kentucky State Police, Pike County Sheriff's Department, and locals. They start into the mountains that surround Nancy's house and end up searching all of the hills that make up Turkey Creek. They have all-terrain vehicles combing through the mountains and go so far as to bring in trained dogs from Lexington. In the end, they never locate or find anything that could give them a lead or an idea to Nancy's whereabouts.
Okay, so what was she wearing? Do we know?
Nancy was last seen wearing black sweatpants, a t-shirt, and a pair of tennis shoes.
Did they come across any articles of clothing that could have matched back to her?
Nope, they didn't find anything at all.
Well, what about Chris? He was the last person to have seen her, and was he ever looked into?
I would say that he was questioned, but I'm not positive how far he was looked into. Foul play wasn't suspected at first, and as far as I know right now, I don't think that it is either, still to this day, but police thought that she may have left on her own accord. But not everyone agreed with that statement. Family members stated to WYMT that Nancy would have never left her boys.
I don't understand. What was the reason behind the police not expecting foul play?
Because Nancy was having a hard time accepting the death of her father, it was speculated that she was depressed and either ran away in a last-pitched effort to forget everything or that she was suicidal.
This always ticks me off so bad, so I'm just going to get on the subject of it, okay, people?
Okay.
That makes no sense whatsoever. Especially when you have a family saying that she would never leave her babies. And just because you're depressed does not mean that you're suicidal. I have had depression and I have had suicidal thoughts before, like I mentioned earlier. I have experienced a lot of death in my life. All the people that, raised me is pretty much gone and dead. So I've experienced this. Now let me explain, people. You can be depressed without being suicidal. And you can be suicidal without killing yourself. So it ticks me off when police just automatically think, oh, well, she was having a hard time, so she may have killed herself or ran away from her problems. Okay, so for one, when someone is suicidal, most people do not have the audacity. I don't mean this in a bad way, but they don't have the audacity to actually go through with it. Once it comes down to that final minute,
yeah,
and you're thinking about it, you're like, I can't reverse this. If I really do this, then there's no coming back.
Yeah.
And, you just lose the urge to do it. And then for two, a lot of people might get within that moment of wanting to kill themselves. And you realize how many people you would be affecting if you did that. She had a mother and kids and friends and family. And especially her having her two sons.
Yeah.
Now, her two sons, I feel like that would have been her saving grace had she been suicidal. That's the end of my point. That's all I'm saying. Rant over.
Oh, yeah, well, I think the same thing. But back to Chris. A lot of people around the area have always speculated that he may have not been as innocent as he proclaimed to be. On Nancy's MySpace, which you can find the link to on our website, there's an album titled This Man Beats His Women, and there are only 2 photos of her and Chris together. There's also some photos that people question because it kind of looks like she has 2 black eyes, but, that could also just be dark circles. On mydeathspace.com, also linked on our website, a user claiming to be Nancy's family admits that he did beat her and that everyone was aware of it. The user says that they had seen Chris at Spence's, which was a local bar around the area back then, 2 weeks after her disappearance. They state that he was hitting on girls left and right and just all around having a good time, which you would think he would have been upset considering his girlfriend is missing.
Yeah. And everybody deals with things in their own way, but I would feel like it would even be less suspicious for him if he actually had known what was happening to her. Because at this point, there was a chance that she was going to come back.
Mm-hmm.
And you would think going out, getting drunk, and finding another girl to put in your bed would be the last thing on your mind if he had really loved her.
Yeah.
It just seems shady to me. The whole situation is really suspicious, people.
Oh, it's shady to me too. And it is definitely suspicious. There's just like something more to this. There's something more to what happened that day, if you ask me. This is literally like a classic tale. You have a well-known abusive boyfriend. You both get into an argument and he's laid hands on her before, and then she just up and vanishes. Like, there's something here that I think us and authorities are missing.
That, or maybe they think the same as the rest of us, but just don't have the evidence or even the circumstantial evidence to build a case against him or anyone. You and I both know the police just can't go off their feelings.
Yeah. As much as it sucks to admit, prosecutors can't try cases based on feelings alone. There has to be facts. And sadly, with Nancy's case, there hasn't been any that's at least been brought out to the public. As of today, seemingly nothing new has come to the surface, and we're still left with the same questions that we had 11 years ago.
Where is Nancy, and what exactly happened to her that day?
Could tarologist Empathy's reading be attempting to connect the two cases? Maybe.
Or maybe not.
Although some want to find a connection between Crystal Gayle Branham and Nancy Ann Lockard, when it comes down to it, the only common factors are that both women were young single mothers and went missing in the same county around the same time. You know, sometimes when authorities hit roadblocks, it's left up to us to stand up and help. Help not just the police, but the families of these two victims. Families who deserve answers and deserve to find their loved ones.
Families who deserve the closure.
So we're asking your help in the disappearances of Crystal Gayle Branham and Nancy Ann Lockard. Crystal was 24 at the time of her disappearance. She is 5'3", approximately 110 pounds, with red hair and brown eyes. Crystal has a tattoo of a heart on her right arm and the word Willie tattooed on the bottom of her left leg. She was last seen wearing a red long-sleeved hooded shirt, dark jeans, and brown slip-on shoes with hoop earrings. Nancy Lockard was 33 at the time of her disappearance. She is 5'11", approximately 130 pounds, with brown hair and green eyes. Nancy has the cartoon character Tigger tattooed on the back of her right shoulder. She has a butterfly tattoo on her right breast and the name Brooklyn on her right ankle. Nancy was last seen wearing black sweatpants, a t-shirt, and tennis shoes.
Please check out our website to see photos of both Crystal and Nancy if you're not familiar with these women.
And we want to ask you, have you seen either one of these women? Anyone that looks similar to Crystal or Nancy? Maybe you know something that may help in locating either one of these women. If you do, we urge you to stand up and lend a hand or voice for these victims. You can even stay anonymous if you feel more secure that way. If you do know something, you can contact the Kentucky State Police at 1-606-433-7711.
Or their tip line at 1-800-222-5555.
Again, I'm your host, Gabrielle.
And I'm Kayla.
We'll talk next week.